Damian Lillard has requested a trade. NBA free agency has been absolutely insane. But before we get to all the crazy NBA stuff, I first want to introduce my guest, diehard Damian Lillard fan. Kyle, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here, man. I've been seeing you grind up and build the community and just reach out to a lot of great content creators. So I'm just glad to be here, talk basketball, talk Dame, and hello to everybody out there.
We have another Damian Lillard fan, except he is a 76ers fan, and you guys already know Derek of the Not Just Dribble podcast. Derek, how are you feeling?
What's up, everybody? I'm feeling pretty well, Gifted. An NBA free agency is like its own third season. I'm looking forward to talking about it today with you guys.
Without further ado, let's get right into it. Damian Lillard finally requested a trade. I have to talk about this first. I think this is like the biggest thing we got to talk about here because, one, me and Kyle for years, Derek, just in case you didn't know, we have been talking about Dame being on the same team for multiple years. I've said for like the last 5 or 6 years, Dame should have been out in Portland, and this time is finally here. I want to go to Kyle first because I'd have to understand how he feels as a diehard Dame fan to finally see his favorite player request out.
It's been a tumultuous 12 years, almost 11 years. Just seeing him go from excellent rookie to having his own team when LaMarcus Aldridge left and went to the Spurs, to him just having multiple random people on his team, random people gone, him going as far as he can, get knocked out first round. So just seeing him actually take himself instead of the team first, it's definitely weird. I think everybody knows, especially people on Twitter, they're saying like, running from the grind. After 11, 12 years of just putting yourself into the team first, I think it's time to put yourself in the big man shoes. So I don't know. I'm actually excited that he's going somewhere. It was weird actually trying to imagine him anywhere else because he's just been here so long. And I was a little bit late to him leaving. Once CJ McCollum left, I was thinking like maybe he can find some people around him. We all know that the Trailblazers is not the best market, so it's kind of hard to find people that actually want to be there. And I think that was their biggest hindrance of that whole team throughout these whole 11, 12 years. Nobody wants to go there, so it's only so much you can do. And it's a lot of problems, honestly, but it's weird seeing him go somewhere else.
I have to agree with that. I mean, I literally saw Dame with Evan Turner, Al-Farouq Aminu, Crabbe, like many different iterations of this Portland team. And I kind of feel bad because Portland's front office was not great for the majority of Dame's tenure. And it seemed like they're finally getting some different type of direction. But now he wants out. Derek, how do you feel about Dame finally asking out?
Yeah, I mean, despite being a Sixers fan my entire life, Dame quickly became my favorite player in the league. And that includes, guys like Joel Embiid and Drew Holiday. Dame has just been so good for so long. I love his game, faults included. Like, I understand Dame's never been quite the defender, but to me, when it mattered, I think he would try. I don't necessarily think he was ever a turnstile. So as long as you gave effort and you were just such an offensive weapon like he has always been, I respect it. So I've always respected Lillard, and I bought into don't run from the grind, stuff a little bit, just because he was living it for a while. I admire small market teams and small market stars trying to succeed, because they are working at disadvantage. I mean, historically, that there's too much proof to show NBA small market teams do not have the same success as your LAs, as your Bostons. Even Philly was once considered a large market. I don't think it's up with, the New Yorks and LAs of the world, but Portland has never been that. Portland has one championship to their name and, a couple of solid runs, I would say, in between there. So Dame made it exciting, and it was fun to tune in despite, the giant West Coast time differential. Whenever I could tune in, it was always fun to watch. So when this, trade request finally happens, I think everyone kind of collectively said it's about time. when realistically, I understand why Dame held out as long as he did. I think he really was trying to exhaust every effort in bringing somebody in, constructing the team a bit, a bit more coherently to try and build for a run. But I think after last season, him having arguably his best statistical season as an individual player and not making the playoffs, really not being a team in the hunt at all, I think that's where you just have to, accept your fate and realize if you want to contend, if you want a different experience as a player while still, essentially being in your prime, you got to move and you got to request that trade. We'll talk about his official request and what has happened since then, but I still admire Lillard. I still think he's a fantastic player, and I'll root for him regardless of what team he goes to. That doesn't mean I'm going to support the team necessarily, because we'll talk about where he could go, but I will still support Dame.
I kind of feel like for me, man, as a Warriors fan, seeing Dame potentially leave the West, which we're now going to transition to like the team he might be going to. It's just weird because I've always seen Dame in a Portland jersey. I've always had to deal with, playing him and his teams for 4 times. And now he has a chance to go to a team that isn't just good, but is also not in the West. He's finally leaving the West to go to the Eastern Conference, potentially for the Miami Heat. And like, this is a team that we just saw in the NBA Finals. They play excellent defense. It was a very heartfelt run with a bunch of undrafted players, which I swear, if I hear the word undrafted again, I might lose my mind, but I had to say it here, sadly. But we saw how impactful those players were. And now you have a chance to pair Dame with Bam and Butler. And now it's like, if you're evaluating those 3 guys, that's the point guard, that's the wing, and that is the center. Those 3 pieces are the foundation of what makes a championship team. And arguably, Dame is putting himself in a real position to win if he winds up on the Miami Heat. Derek, what do you think about the fit of Dame on the Miami Heat?
I mean, I think the fit is seamless. Again, we talked, I briefly mentioned his defense, which is not top notch, but he's surrounded by guys that can absolutely cover for him. We know what Jimmy is, especially in the playoffs as a POA. I think he's still formidable. We know Bam is, after this playoff run, the second best defender in the NBA. Some would probably still have him as the best defender in the NBA. So you got to feel pretty good about that. And I think Miami always just finds a way to execute a system really well. I mean, we saw players like Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, to a lesser degree, Gabe Vincent, guys that necessarily aren't great defenders, but they can work through a system and make teams have to really try second, third, and fourth options on possessions. And if you can do that, your chances are you're going to succeed. So I think Dame would be fine on the defensive end. He's a very easy plug and play guy. And then offensively, he fits exactly what they need. He can be a high level playmaker, which looks really good next to Butler and Bam, who are already very good playmakers in their own right. And he fits the scoring bill they so desperately need. He's flirted with averaging 30 points in a season multiple times. He obviously has crossed that threshold before. So we know he can get buckets. We know he's going to help the shooting. And we know he's going to fit every level of their offense. So I think it's really seamless. What matters is just whatever you want to pop in. Maybe don't have an undrafted guy have to get core playoff minutes when a Butler or Dame have to go to the bench. But Miami has to feel really good about it. I think that's why they're going so hard for getting Lillard into Miami.
Yeah, definitely. Just seeing Damian Lillard in the type of plays that Miami runs, especially just seeing them in the playoffs, going towards the last couple of rounds, leading to the finals, seeing Jimmy Butler initiate the offense so well, but also knowing that he's not the best playmaker that you can get out there. I think Dame Lillard can definitely take a lot of pressure off of Jimmy Butler, because the past 2 times they've been in the finals, the thing that breaks them down is Jimmy Butler having to carry a lot of offensive pressures on that team. So if Dame can come in, work in the system, he buys in, which I'm pretty sure he can. He seems like a perfect plug and play type of player. You have 3, I'll say serviceable playmakers. I definitely like that Bam can handle the ball, and just the fact that we can see Dame Lillard be off the ball for once and actually trust in the people that's around him. You know, going back to the Portland Trailblazers the past couple years, you know, when CJ was on the team, he's not the best playmaker. You know, he can do what he can. I definitely think that he has the IQ to do it, but having somebody and two people at that can get you exactly to where you need to go. And if something isn't working for you, you can dish out to anybody, run some plays, and like I said, buy into that system. It will alleviate all the problems that Miami had, and which ultimately, you know, led to them losing, you know, other than Jokic just being amazing. But yeah, I think it helps, along with a couple other people that they might need, some big people, some defensive guys, just people to buy in. I think the Heat can go far again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just it. We said, like, the Heat, for some reason, have had 2 NBA Finals runs in this decade, and I think every season we're kind of like, they're going to be a pain in the neck for some playoff team, but we don't expect them to necessarily win a series. You know, we'll be talking about Milwaukee, we'll be talking about Boston, occasionally talk about Philly, but realistically, we don't pick the Heat to end up in the finals. And again, this year they ended up there. So getting a guy like Dame, you have to imagine that's what puts you over the hump. You'd rather have your top 3 ends, your top 3 just be hammered out and solidified, and then figure out the little stuff after. Miami was figuring it out with guys that we didn't expect necessarily are going to be starters for anyone coming into this season. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that they've made that work, making Dame work, to me is not really a concern at all. Spo, I think, has earned the reputation as the current best head coach in the league. I guess if you want to say if Popovich had more talent, it'd be a different story, but Spo has seemingly made everything work in Miami, regardless of injuries, regardless of restrictions, regardless of talent. He can put a team out there that's going to compete and nearly win at the highest level. So I feel good about it. The question is, aside from a guy like Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry, who have been in trade talks for the better part of a year, essentially Lowry's entire tenure as a Heat, I wonder who else, if anyone, has to be included in that. If you could somehow acquire Dame with just giving up those 2 guys, that means you still have Haywood Highsmith, who I think is going to have an increased role, former Sixer, of course. I got to shout him out. And then you got guys like Caleb Martin, who should have honestly been the ECF MVP for that series.
I would agree.
You're bringing back Josh Richardson, which is a body, but you expect to help with wing defense. And then you got a bunch of guys that you kind of have to wait and see. Yurtsevin, of course, you know, he might get tick this time. The rookie Jaime out of UCLA, people are excited about him. I think he blends perfectly with the Heat. What exactly his role is, I don't know. And then Jovic is probably the other guy, the rookie who really didn't get any PT this season. So the Heat can figure out the little things. And if you have Dame, Jimmy, and Bam, now all of a sudden the remaining free agents are probably looking at like, that's a good team. Chances are I could make a difference for another potential finals run. Oh, and it's Miami, which has quickly become, unsurprisingly, a really popular market for NBA players. So, yeah, chances are that Heat team will be right back in the finals if, you know, everything plays out how they want it to.
Yeah, I would say my only concern of right now is if they can build the right people to buy into that system, which
right
in itself is not the most worrisome thing, because again, like you said, Spoelstra has proven that he can take any guy, almost any guy, and make them work good for a system in a specific role, which might brighten them to other teams, say if they trade them, just like Max Strus, just like a Gabe Vincent. Before then, people weren't looking for him. And now seeing that they can buy in, seeing their skills and letting them shine and develop a little bit more, they are getting more money they probably ever was seeing if they didn't go to the Heat. So I just really want them to try to fill it in. The fact that it's the Heat and they have a very good coaching system that can break down some of the pressures. But again, we've seen teams that are a little top heavy and then going deep into the playoffs, if one person chops off or somebody gets injured, or maybe a specific role player might get injured, then they might become stagnant and they're going back to, okay, how do we get past this next game, let alone this next series? So hopefully they can fill up the team with some good players.
Yeah, I agree with the points you two have made with the Heat. I think that adding Dame adds versatility to their offense. I think versus Denver, their defense might not have been as great because obviously Jokic is just a complete mismatch and is tough. But I think a lot of times there were multiple possessions where Jokic was not on the floor. And the Heat's offense just could not survive because they were really relying on Strus to hit shots, on Gabe to hit, tough pull-up jumpers. You now have Dame, who for years and years and years has been able to consistently create advantages against that Denver defense. And now you have more versatile lineups where it could be a Dame and Bam inverted pick and rolls where Bam has the ball, Dame is the screener to pop, or Bam catches it and explodes, or even Dame and Jimmy two-man game. Like, there's more versatility, and I think adding that to a team that already had a backbone based on defense is huge. The thing that I will question is you're losing a lot of shooting. Hero's not going to be there. Gabe's not going to be there. Max Strus, in my opinion, is kind of mid to garbage, but he's also not going to be there. Like, you need to have more guys to space the floor effectively. But outside of that, I think the foundation of what a Dame team could be with a wing who, in my opinion, is the top 10 player, and I think is actually better than Dame, but Dame being in a situation where he has all the defense around him from the 5 position and also the 3 spot, it could pay some huge dividends for them. My question to y'all, though, is do you think if this roster stays relatively the same, let's say that Tyler Hero's gone, Jaime's gone, Gabe is gone, Max Strus is gone, but they add Dame, can this team beat the Denver Nuggets?
I mean, my short answer is yes, they can. I don't think I would pick them in the series just with this exact roster that you described.
Fair. That's fair. I don't have any issue with that. I think that on paper, the problem I've had with Denver, and I think they're a really great team, obviously, but I don't think that Denver faced a team outside of the Suns, ironically, where there was a guard consistently stressing out their defense. And as good as Booker was, I still think from the perimeter specifically, like, Dame's range is a problem for Denver. It's been for multiple years. The issue, though, is as good as Dame would be, the team around him would not show up in spots. And the team had a terrible defense as well. I think Dame being placed in a better situation will kind of bridge that gap. What do you say to that, Kyle? Do you think they can beat Denver?
With this current team, no. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying before. They need to very much place the perfect people in these open spots in order to even compete with somebody like a Denver. They got pretty far as anybody would have thought against Denver in the finals, but because they didn't have another scorer, because Max Strus wasn't really hitting shots, Caleb Martin took a while to heat up. And Bam, he was pretty solid. Definitely solid in a lot of the games. But I want to see them get a big that can take away that center role from Bam. I think he very much thrives in that 4 to 5 range. I don't like seeing him. It's kind of like with AD. Like with AD, I don't want to see him at a 5. I like seeing him at a 4 because he's comfortable being that way. And then you can have somebody that is more specific to that center role, which is, defending, just spot up, taking the paint out. And then if you have Bam, going around doing his playmaking thing, like you said, those inverted screens, we were talking about that when the trade request happened, that can prove very plentiful. And just the offense, the way they were running last year, seeing Jimmy kind of go into the low post elbow area, seek out a lot of pressure, seek out a lot of physical attention from whoever he's guarding, and then as soon as somebody's open, he'll dish it to him and hopefully get a 3. So I like that a lot. But just imagine Dame being on the other side of those passes. That takes a lot of eyes off of somebody else, which we seen with Duncan Robinson doing in the finals and in the Eastern Conference Finals, leaking a lot and getting those open buckets and just cutting the lead down, or even if they did have the lead, making that lead a lot bigger. So I still don't know exactly who they could plug in. I don't know if Thomas Bryant is necessarily that guy. I like him for what he does, but he's still kind of limited, especially on the defensive end, which is the main thing I think they should get at that 5 spot. But I'm definitely excited to see who they can get.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off of what Kai just said, I think a big is kind of, the last piece of the puzzle. Maybe not necessarily to take Bam out of the 5 spot, but again, a roamer who can absorb some contact and some fouls to keep Bam out of some trouble, but also help on rebounding. I mean, I think Bam is a fantastic center. I think he's in like a top 3, certainly top 5 category as a center in the NBA. I just think like his rebounding, sometimes he's kind of outmatched. He's an amazing athlete, but he's still 6'9". And I think teams as overall can out rebound the Heat sometimes, and that gets them into trouble because obviously we know they're small. So to me, like, Kai mentioned Thomas Bryant. I've got the same doubts that he does. I don't think he's going to be enough defensively. We saw him really not get any tick as soon as he went to Denver, despite having some cool games in LA this past season. So the biggest question mark, and again, like asking a second-year guy to really plug in, even as a rotational guy, could be a lot. But I look at Nikola Jovic, dude's got a 6'10" frame. That's something, and that's the Heat don't have a whole lot of that. So he could be a 4 who is at least rangy and can help in, the zone defense that the Miami Heat love to run regular season and postseason. If you can have him carve out a real role, that certainly helps. But I agree overall, they need to go out and get somebody to help fill the gaps here, because I'm looking at the roster of guys that I would actually want to get playoff minutes. And outside of our big 3, again, assuming Dame's here, we've got Highsmith. I definitely want getting some run. Caleb Martin, of course, is a starter at that point. Josh Richardson, I guess. Duncan Robinson, I guess, is essentially guaranteed, especially with the money you're paying him. And then that's it. I mean, everybody else, to me, is either unproven or it kind of remains to be seen. Because again, we're assuming that Jaime is traded here.
Right.
So yeah, I think they're at least something away. I don't know what that something is. To me, I don't know that they could pry this guy from Memphis, but to me, he screams he could be successful in the Heat. That's Brandon Clark. I think it's a buy low situation because he's coming off of an injury last season. He's another undersized guy, which is a weird mismatch, but he can play the 4 or the 5, I think, really well for the Heat. He's an amazing offensive rebounder and a solid rebounder overall. Good cutter, hustles. I think that could work given this situation. I'm not sure they make the money work necessarily, but that's the kind of guy I would target. And honestly, just talk to the Grizz in general, because if you don't get him, I would ask about Xavier Tillman and basically the front court guys from Memphis, and just see if you can pry one of them away. That would be terrific, and that would answer a lot of the questions we have for the Heat.
Tillman would be great, honestly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, because I think there's still holes on this roster. I'm personally in the camp that if you add Dame to the Heat, I do believe that they could beat Denver. I think there's an argument to say that Denver's the better team. However, I don't believe it's by as big of a gap as it would be last year. Primarily because the pull-up shooting and the consistency of what Dame is as an offensive player, I think will take the pressures off of Bam and Jimmy greatly on the offensive end, which can really unlock them defensively even more than they do now. I feel like a lot of times the load that these players have to carry on the other end can directly impact how great they are defensively. So I think that could pay dividends. But I'm happy that Dame finally requested out, because I'm not gonna lie, it's been years and years and years of I I don't want to be on a team that can't win a championship, but I want to win the championship in Portland, but I also don't want to be traded, but I do want to be traded. But like, it's been a lot of back and forth for multiple years. And I've had many heated arguments with Kyle about saying that Dame should leave, Dame should be gone. He's not going to win. He can't do X, Y, or Z. And now Dame is finally taking the initiative in himself after being loyal for a very, very long time to say, you know what? I want to win. I don't want to end my career or waste the best years of my time on a team that is not ready to actually compete for a championship. And going to the Heat, to me, is a great sign that he understands that. So much respect to Dame. Hopefully this happens because this will continue to shake up the NBA. But on the topic of trade requests, James Harden, Derek, Mr. Sixers fan, how did you react when you found out James Harden opted in and requested a trade from your Philadelphia 76ers?